Hello, friends. Welcome, Salem Mason Happy Home. I had an epiphany this morning, which I'm sure for me it's like a day late and a dollar short, because I'm sure that intelligent people everywhere have already thought about this. But I had put out a video a few days ago about this Dylan Bryan Adams twit from Minnesota, a shameful example of a Minnesotan who keyed all those Teslas, and another shameful example of Minnesotan, that Moriarty, that district attorney, county attorney, whatever the hell she is, let him go, let him walk. Okay. And I was positing that she may have let him walk to anger people so that they can start riots again in the Twin Cities, because they hate Trump so bad that they would rather see Minnesotans suffer and probably die in some cases because they're mad, because that's the level of shallow arrogance that they possess. Anyway, this morning I heard a little quip, an interview I think CNN was doing with Chris Cuomo, and Chris Cuomo was talking very passionately and animated about Abrego Garcia, and he said that he thinks that the Democrats are looking to make Garcia the next George Floyd. So I'm not alone in thinking that this is a setup with these crooks and criminals and these just egregious examples of humanity, that there's a setup on the way, and that's what they're trying to do. And I thought further with this as I pondered this. I realized that the big question that one side of the aisle is not answering and another side keeps shouting at them is, why do you want all these people here? Why are you letting these people in here? Well, out of 12 million people that they let in the border over the Biden administration, the majority of them were single, military-age men from all walks of life. From African nations, South American nations, Middle Eastern nations, from China. And the MS-13 gang members, those individuals are fearless terrorists. They have no regard for human life. They do not care if they torture, maim, and harm somebody. And what do you do with millions of men like that? You turn them into an army of ruthless soldiers so that you can take over and overthrow the government, specifically the United States of America and its Constitution. It reminded me of, I believe it was a TED Talk episode that I had listened to a few years ago with one of the founders of BLM, not the Bureau of Land Management, but Black Lives Matter. And this individual, this heinous excuse for a human being, this woman had started screaming and hollering about how, yes, she was proudly Marxist, and that the Constitution needed to be abolished, and the United States needed to be taken down, and a new government enacted. So if you're a Marxist and you're wanting and actively working to take down a government, it's because you don't want a democratic republic. You want a Marxist communist nation. And what better way to do that than bring in an army through the border? The Democrats, when sane Americans, Democrat, Republican, didn't matter, rebelled against the Democrats for their appalling attitude with regard to what happened in Aurora, Colorado, when those savages took over that apartment complex. Why would they need to do that? Well, they need a headquarters. They need a fort. And they didn't care if they tortured and maimed and terrorized people to do it. They were using those Americans to set an example and say, we're here and this is what we can do to you. The Biden administration knew that Joe Biden was not competent or coherent enough to understand completely and fully what was happening. And his filthy excuse for a human being, wife and son, were more than likely working behind the scenes because they both were allowed to run cabinet meetings. That's a fact. That's not an opinion. That's an absolute fact, behind closed doors. And our United States government administration was listening to them and allowing them to do this. And they're not government workers. They have no authority. They're not elected officials. So that tells you what was happening. The cognizance there was not valid. So they need to run everything. They need to have all the money, all the control, all the say. And if we are independent, free-thinking individuals that can get a job and take care of ourselves and make our own choices, we're not going to need them as much. And they want the government to give everybody everything so that they can control the purse strings. They can divvy that money up however they want. And most of it's going to them. You know it is. Doja's proven that. So they let all of these savages in because they were attempting to amass an army to overthrow the United States of America and its citizens from the inside out. They're like termites, carpenter ants, roaches. And now that they lost, they're still continuing to do this by coming up with martyrs so that they can anger people, so they can cause riots. And those riots can end up in a civil war. Citizens against non-citizens. Republicans against Democrats, obviously, because that's the game that they want to play. That's their grift. I'm an American that lives and dies by Old Glory. I believe that justice is blind. I believe that the government of Minnesota is as corrupt as the Biden administration was. I believe that these people need to be investigated. They need to be impeached. They need to be voted out of office. And I believe with all my heart and soul that they are trying to overthrow this government. And I know that's probably, old news to many of you. But when you put the events in order, flooding the border with illegal military men who have no regard for human life, so they're not going to care who they kill. They have no emotional attachment to that. They're also experts in weapons and terrorism and all that. Bringing in this army. But now the army is being extradited back to where they came from. So they've got these radical judges who are also Marxists and communists that are trying to keep them in here because they need more time to weaponize these illegal militant men. That's why they're blocking all this stuff. A judge, a Democratic radical judge in New Mexico, was harboring an illegal MS-13 gang member. Why? Why do they care so much more about these individuals than they do Americans? It's because these individuals are puppets. They can be manipulated, grifted, controlled. That's why they're doing this shit. They're trying to amass an army to take over the government. And I just hope and pray that Trump will be successful in blocking this from happening. But here in Minnesota, of course, we have to deal with the embarrassment of Walz, Moriarty, Ellison, Feeding Our Future, all of these gang mentality people. And I grieve for my home, for my state of Minnesota. But we all need to look around a little closer at our environment. We need to be more cautious. We need to be more alert. Because when a wild animal gets cornered, they lash out. And that's what's happening with the Dems right now. They're lashing out like the wild, rabid animals that they are. So be aware. Keep protesting this nonsense. Keep speaking out on behalf of America. And until next time, do good and be good.